How soon could Elon Musk realistically send humans to Mars? Another good question.
I have strong views on that. My read of the history of space exploration is such that we do big, expensive things only when it's geopolitically expedient, such as we feel threatened by an enemy. And so for him to just say, let's go to Mars because it's the next thing to do, what does that venture capitalist meeting look like? So, Elon, what do you want to do? I want to go to Mars. How much will it cost? $1 trillion. Is it safe? No, people will probably die. What's the return on the investment? Nothing. That's a 5-minute meeting, and it doesn't happen.
I recently came across a clip that was completely mind-blowing, featuring Neil deGrasse Tyson on Piers Morgan Uncensored. It all kicked off when Tyson criticized Elon Musk's plan to colonize Mars during an appearance on Bill Maher's show, labeling it as impractical and excessively costly. Musk responded on X, which ignited this whole fiery discussion. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Feel free to share in the comments. Now, let's get into the video.
Oh, wow, they really don't get it. Mars is critical to the long-term survival of consciousness. I realize that it makes no sense as an investment. That's why I'm gathering resources. So, does one of the world's finest minds really just not get it? Well, let's find out. I'm rejoined on Uncensored by Professor Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil, great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Good to see you again.
You just don't get it, says Elon Musk. Your response?
Well, first of all, I'm not a fan of commenting on what other people commented about what was commented upon. That's just fuel for clickbait on social media. So rather than just respond to what people responded, let me just say I've read extensively about the history of big, expensive projects in our species, going from the pyramids to the Great Wall of China to the Manhattan Project. And you go down that list, and the greatest of them, the biggest of them, the most expensive of them, related to the survival of who participated in it. They felt threatened. And so, sorry, the pyramids was not that. That was praise of royalty or deity. That's another big driver that existed in the history of our species. Much less of that happens today. And most of it is driven by the I don't want to die gene. And so we went to the moon. We felt threatened by the Russians, the godless commies, around the world. And so these are the motivations that enable people to write checks. And at any time people said, let's do it because it's the natural next thing to do, it just never happens. If you go back to the Apollo era, while we were going to the moon, people forgetting that we went there as a militaristic statement, people who forgot that said, oh, we're on the moon by 1969, we'll be on Mars by 1985. They were just extending a timeline that they thought was a natural, inevitable thing. And nothing that's expensive is ever inevitable. So that's the foundations of my comment. And in terms of going to Mars as a survival plan, if you think about what could put life at risk here on Earth, that could include, global, very serious pandemic, or asteroid strikes, or we trash the climate, whatever. To think of Mars as Earth 2.0 could only really happen after you terraform Mars. And the point I made, which was not in your clip, was if you have the power of geoengineering to terraform Mars, then you have the power of geoengineering to fix Earth and turn Earth back into Earth, as opposed to Mars back into Earth. So just realistically, shipping 1 billion people to Mars, or however many, by the way, I have nothing against that. I just don't see it happening.
You know what? Neil deGrasse Tyson completely took apart Elon Musk with his reply. I'm telling you, he broke down the harsh reality of how colossal projects are actually accomplished. Just think about it. While Elon is going on about how vital Mars is for the future of human consciousness, Tyson challenges him with, all right, where's that $1 trillion coming from? And frankly, he's making a valid point. When has humanity ever shelled out that amount of money just because something seemed trendy and futuristic? The Apollo program wasn't about passion. It was about the fear that the Soviets would launch nukes into space. The Manhattan Project? That was all about World War II. These weren't about dreams, they were survival tactics. And don't even get me started on the terraforming discussion. Tyson basically said, if you think you can make Mars livable, why are we not focusing on saving Earth? It's flawless reasoning. We're all talking about bringing life to a dead planet while simultaneously ruining our already habitable one. Can someone make that make sense? Honestly, I can acknowledge Musk's incredible achievements with SpaceX, but his whole "I'm collecting resources" spiel comes across like a billionaire having a massive midlife crisis on an interplanetary scale. Tyson's busting out historical evidence while Musk is running on vibes. When an astrophysicist who's dedicated his career to studying space explains why this ambitious space plan probably won't work as we imagine, maybe it's worth paying attention to him rather than just getting upset about it.
Based on my read of human behavior.
So, a lot to unpack there. Look, I've got massive respect for you. I also have a lot of respect for Musk. I also like the fact that he dares to dream very big. And I actually had the honour, actually, I would describe it, of spending a couple of hours with him down in France in the summer, where we got into the colonization of Mars and why he felt so passionately about it. And he said a few things. One, he said, we have to do this because at some stage, planet Earth is just not going to be a viable place anymore, was his belief. Secondly, that inevitably at some stage, planet Earth will be incinerated by the sun anyway. We don't know when that will happen, but one day it will happen. I'll get your response to that.
We do know when it will happen, but yeah.
When will it happen on that point?
Oh, yeah, let me check my calendar.
Right, but I mean,
no, the sun will
do we have any idea when that may happen?
Yeah, the sun will transition into a red giant phase, assuming it behaves like every other star, just like it. And as it does, its outer shell will expand, and the surface of the sun will get closer and closer to Earth, and it will evaporate. Our oceans will come to a rolling boil and evaporate into the atmosphere. The atmosphere will evaporate into space, and Earth will be a charred ember that will get swallowed
Why
by
are
the
you
sun.
laughing,
And Mars,
Neil? This is not funny.
Sun,
you're painting a picture of utter extinction and apocalypse. Why are you laughing?
Yeah, that's it. No, because it's not that it's funny. It's that it's in 5 billion years.
Right.
So we have a whole lot of other sort of prioritized things we should be thinking about between now and then.
But on the principle,
by then we might have colonized other star systems.
Right. So
that'd be fine.
Here's the thing about Mars, though. He said, look, if we're going to do this, and he believes passionately we need to do this as a kind of backup, really, for the survival of the human species. He said you have to replicate exactly the conditions of Earth. And he said, for example, if you forget about one vitamin, everyone would die up there, right? So everything has to be replicated in a way that you can replicate exactly what happens here on Mars. From an astrophysicist's point of view, is that actually technically possible? Is there any reason why we couldn't colonize Mars from just a pure technical point of view of recreating the conditions in which human existence exists here?
Yeah, so just let me unpack what you said. So first of all, at the core of this, other than living in habitat modules, either underground or just, wherever, that have to be heated because Mars is very cold, and Mars has barely any atmosphere, so you have to pump that in as well. Short of that, Elon has great ambitions of terraforming Mars. I love it. I once stole a coffee mug from SpaceX that had Mars on it, and I kept it on my shelf for a very long time. I don't drink coffee much, but I enjoy space-themed coffee mugs. And then one day I said, I'm going to have a hot chocolate. And so I put hot chocolate in there, which heated the mug. And while the mug heated, Mars terraformed into Earth. So I said, that's a classy move right there, Mr. Musk. So and I didn't know that for like a year because I don't use them. I just collect them. But my point is that if you want to ship humans from Earth to Mars, Mars needs to kind of look like Earth. And by the way, it's tantalizingly close in properties relative to other planets. Venus is 900 degrees Fahrenheit. You're not going there. But Mars is tipped on its axis. It has seasons. It has approximately 24-hour day. It has polar ice caps, as we currently do. And so it's been the object of people's fascination for hundreds of years. So I don't have a problem with any of that. I'm just describing the practicality of it. And if you have the technology and the power to terraform Mars and ship people there, you probably have the ability to bat asteroids out of the way that might have been headed towards Earth. So I'm just speaking in practical terms. I'm not trying to stop anybody from dreaming. I love dreaming beyond horizon.
Honestly, what's infuriating about all of this? Here's Elon Musk, sitting on a fortune larger than the GDP of most nations. And rather than using this enormous wealth and clout to address the tangible, fixable issues we face on Earth, he's fixated on this Mars dream that he himself admits has no financial payoff. Just imagine what impact that $1 trillion could have on humanity right now. We're dealing with the rapid progression of climate change, people dying from diseases we can prevent, ecosystems collapsing, and a level of poverty that could be significantly alleviated with that kind of funding. Yet, instead, he prefers spending it on sending people to perish on an icy desert, simply because it sounds adventurous. Tyson nailed it. If Musk has the power and resources to transform an entire barren planet, why isn't he channeling that same effort into repairing the damage we've caused to our perfectly suitable planet? We're witnessing Earth become increasingly uninhabitable right in front of us, but instead of addressing that, we're encouraged to jump ship. It's as if your house is burning down, and instead of calling the fire department, you start constructing a new home in Antarctica. Seriously, how does that make any sense? The most aggravating part is Musk presents this as a noble endeavor to safeguard consciousness, yet it smacks of a wealthy man's backup plan. Oh, Earth's getting tough? No worries, my billionaire pals and I will just head over to Mars, while everyone else deals with the chaos we contributed to. If he were genuinely concerned about human survival, he'd invest that $1 trillion into renewable energy, carbon capture, pandemic preparedness, initiatives that would genuinely benefit the 8 billion people already on this planet rather than potentially assisting a few hundred to pretend as Martians.
Point I was going to make to you,
got done.
Because I was watching the Bill Maher show live, actually, and that was the thing that struck me was, here's Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the great dreamers, right? I mean, you literally have dreamed big your entire life. This is your raison d'etre, is to think the biggest things imaginable, right? And there you were, it appeared in the moment to be kind of pouring a bit of cold water on probably the biggest thinker on the planet right now and his massive biggest dream. And that was the only thing I was, well, I thought, well, the next time I talk to you, I'm just, whether you were aware that that was the way you were coming over.
I'm just trying to be real. I mean, I'm in my old age. I've just seen how people behave. I see how things get funded. Now, of course, Elon plus one or two other, that's all it would take, one or two other very wealthy people in the world could, if they wanted, as basically a vanity project, send astronauts to Mars. But if you want to think of the return on that investment, SpaceX is a corporation. All right, it's not just some private venture. He's getting money and contracts, and he's paying salaries, and I presume there's a board helping him make decisions about that. And so, in the real world, there's certain things that are more likely to happen than others.
But if you but let me push you on that. But let me challenge you on that. So let's go back to the start of the 20th century. Okay, when there would have been people around who were saying, you know what, let's go to the moon. And people would have dismissed them and said, don't be so ridiculous. It's massively, prohibitively expensive. We don't really have the technology to do this, blah, 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 blah. It was only really the power of people's dreams. Now, ultimately, you're right. There was a military context to why we did it. The West wanted to beat Russia up there. I get that. I get that. But at the same time, you know, I remember the great speeches by Kennedy, you know, about all this. And it was exciting. It was thrilling. The world watched as Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon, and those dreams that were dismissed at the early part of the century actually came true. They happened. Could it be that you're just, I hesitate to say this, Neil, but could it be you're just, you know, you're one of the doomsayers of the earlier 20th century saying we should never go to the moon because it's too expensive, it can't happen, blah, 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 which they must have been saying at the time.
I am way more deeply informed than your previous sentence implies. So a couple of things. Going up to the launch of Sputnik, most naysayers about the moon had no confidence that we would ever accomplish such a feat. And they didn't have an understanding of the progress of science and technology and engineering and political will, geopolitical will. So that was not in the equation of how they were thinking about their future. And so now when Sputnik got launched, what happened? Oh my gosh, space was pierced. And if it's pierced, that means we can do anything in space. And beginning in the early 1960s, the predictions about the future flipped. And it wasn't, oh, we'll never do it. They'll say, we'll do it all. And that's why we'll have colonies on Mars. Do you know Werner von Braun? was even quoted as saying, by the year 2000, we'll have the first human born on a moon colony. So highly ambitious statements, but why didn't any of that happen? Because we didn't go to the moon because it was because it's in our DNA, or it's because, no, we went because we were scared. And the speech you remember from John Kennedy, where he says, we'll put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth, that's a stirring speech. And the hair rises up on the back of your neck. You can hear him in his Brookline, Massachusetts accent reciting this. But that's not what wrote the checks. That same speech, May 25th, 1961, to a joint session of Congress, 6 weeks after Yuri Gagarin had come out of orbit, 6 weeks, wouldn't utter the man's name. Before that, part of the speech that we all remember and that's chiseled in the granite at Kennedy Space Center, there's a part that's not chiseled in the granite. You know what it says? I'm paraphrasing. If the events of recent weeks couldn't even say Yuri Gagarin, if the events of recent weeks are any indication of the impact of this adventure on the minds of men everywhere, then we need to show the world the path of freedom over the path of tyranny. That was the battle cry against communism, and that's what wrote the check.
This is the moment where Tyson completely tears apart Piers Morgan's dreams and ambitions argument, and watching it unfold is somewhat intense. Piers attempts to use the classic example of Kennedy's uplifting speech about the moon, but Tyson counters with solid historical data that torpedoes that entire notion. His explanation of how the true motivation was Cold War anxiety rather than some lofty human aspiration hits in a unique way. This is exactly what exasperates me about the whole Musk scenario. To me, he's peddling a romanticized narrative of space exploration that was never the reality. We didn't land on the moon because we're innate explorers. We did it out of fear of the Soviets. That's just reality. What really perplexes me is Musk's relentless survival of consciousness angle, which, if I'm honest, feels more like a luxury pursuit for the very wealthy. I don't pretend to understand the mindset of billionaires, but perhaps this entire Mars venture is just the ultimate pastime for affluent individuals. Where regular billionaires might invest in yachts or sports teams, Musk seems to want an entire planet. Here's the kicker. Tyson points out that SpaceX is a corporation with a board and shareholders. Even if Musk sincerely buys into this Mars vision, eventually, the commercial realities must set in, right? You can't perpetually drain investor funds on an endeavor that evidently offers no monetary payoff. What irks me most is the timing. We're all witnessing our planet's climate collapsing. People are struggling to meet basic necessities, yet this guy's prepared to funnel $1 trillion into a contingency plan on Mars. It's like your home is being inundated, and instead of repairing the plumbing, you decide to build an underwater residence. What's your take? Am I being overly skeptical, or does this whole Mars obsession seem like a diversion from the pressing issues we actually need to tackle? If we channeled that same vigor and funding into repairing Earth, maybe we wouldn't even require a backup planet. Share your thoughts in the comments. Are you buying into Musk's vision, or do you think Tyson's perspective on sticking to reality over fantasies is spot on?